Right. Welcome, everyone, to Not a Lonely Coffee Break. We are your hosts. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Meaghan. We are a podcast about coffee and work, but make it queer. And we are
Always.
so excited for today's episode. We have someone near and dear to us and to the community. I know that they do a lot for not just the queer community, but just for those in need, and has been a community servant for quite some time. So I'm extremely excited.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Maddie, how's it going?
I'm so excited about this episode. I think we picked a perfect person to be our first person to share our coffee
Oh yeah.
chats with. So I'm really excited today. I did some research because the person we're talking to today, their experience is different than mine. And so I just was kind of curious to know what was out there. And so, Meaghan, can I share some of what I discovered? It wasn't necessarily that it was new to me. It was one of those things that I feel like even though I'm part of the queer community, there's still so much that I'm learning about, especially when it comes to workplace issues and the different experiences that people are dealing with. Some good, some not so good. But one thing that
Right.
I kind of came upon as I was looking up some talking points for this episode was in 2020, the Supreme Court did clarify that federal law does prohibit anti-trans discrimination in employment. There was a big case, the Bostock versus Clayton County. However, even though, the Supreme Court made this great clarification for us, you would think, oh, lots of positive things, but the data still shows that we still have 17 out of 50 states that have laws and policies that allow
Wow.
for discrimination against transgender and gender-nonconforming
Right.
individuals in the workplace.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Um,
It's
Wild.
insane that they have to, people are so hateful on that, or so
Mm-hmm.
ignorant as far as,
Mm-hmm.
if we created a safer environment, people would be more productive likely and more supportive
Mm-hmm.
of, the state, and likely things going on, things that they're trying to support with their community as far
Mm-hmm.
as laws and governing. But then the more you take it away, I mean, the more that there's like, what good is that doing for anybody?
Really sad too, because it, like, all of these negative policies that basically are saying we're going to have a policy that says we can openly treat you poorly because we don't agree with your identity, who you
Right.
are as a person. And so it is prompting people to be fearful, and even they're making attempts to hide their gender identity, hide who they are. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which, of course, I'm a big mental health person, but like that can lead to a lot of mental health concerns, which we'll save for a future episode at another date. But
Right.
it's just so, I mean, all the stuff I was finding, talked about, people were sharing stories about how they'd been openly harassed, just so
Wow.
much. And like,
Yeah.
that's to be fearful to go to work, a place that you should feel
It's
safe.
mm-hmm.
It was really sad.
Well, it's like,
It was really alarming for me.
yeah, and at the end of the day, like, as someone who manages people, any person, if you were a person, a human working in
Mm-hmm.
this part, like, at the end of the day, we're just trying to work, get an income, and go home,
There's just a lot. I just continued to like go down the rabbit hole and was finding article after article of like people sharing their stories,
Mm-hmm.
what different studies had said, and I'm not going to be able to tag all of them. I'm at least going to make sure in our transcript that I include a link to one of the many
Awesome.
articles I came across that was really interesting. But it also, and I'm going to plug this particular article because it also kind of gave me a little bit of hope at the end.
Yes,
Um,
I need some.
yeah,
Please give us
it
some
did have
positive vibes in
some
the air.
it did have some positivity, I felt like, at least. So there was some more data um that was as recent as 2023, so that's last year,
Mm-hmm.
um where they it was a company that like surveyed different employers, and there's a scale how they determine like where you fall in terms of your inclusivity and your commitment to inclusion. And
Okay.
so you want to score higher on that survey. And there were more companies that were scoring a 90 or higher on the survey um, than previous years that they conducted this same survey. And so
Okay.
this was sort of a way that they were able to say, look, these are things that we have these corporations, there is a commitment to inclusion. It might look differently in all of these places, but one thing that really stood out to me was obviously they talked about some of what we talked about in our last episode, you know, consulting, trainings, kind of bringing in
Mm-hmm.
some of those outside workshops, which was
Right.
awesome, of course. But it also talked about making sure that your company is also engaged in community work and
Okay.
advocacy. Like, hey, we want to engage in these conversations to
Uh-huh.
support our employees and their communities. It talks about, you know, engaging in different community initiatives or even task force, or
Mm-hmm.
one example even talked about like facilitating town halls. It talked about, you know, that need of not just doing the internal stuff, but also doing it outwardly as well, so that everyone else sees that you are committed to what you say you are
Right.
committed to.
No, it's really exciting to hear that because, I think from that last event, one of the things that stood out to me is just from the speaker there, they were just saying, hey, from allies, what we want is just for you to be present,
Mm-hmm.
just come in, just see what's going on, listen. You don't have to engage if you don't want to, but just come in, see what's it about. And then even like hosting something like a town hall, which sounds really exciting to me because me and Maddie were nerds. So maybe look towards the future of Meaghan, Maddie, not
True,
a
this
lonely
is
coffee
true.
break, town
We are
hall.
nerds.
And so I, just hearing that makes me a bit excited and hopeful for the future, but
Mm-hmm.
also, I think we've also touched that, you know, even though companies are taking those steps, it's also up to the leaders in that company or even
Mm-hmm.
the allies for the community to stick up and say something if something is not going right or if you suspect of abuse or harassment going on. Um, because if they have those policies in place, they have protections for people who want to speak out for those who might be
Mm-hmm.
being harassed, right? So maybe look into that. What are your company's
Mm-hmm.
policies?
Oh,
If
and if
you're a
there
small
aren't
business,
policies,
if
red flag.
yes, red flag. Okay, is this even a place I want to be working for that doesn't protect their workers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and even if it's a small business, if you're like, I don't even know where to start with these policies, people are, get get with some research, look up other people's company policies. I'm sure they're probably made public because they're trying to be more transparent, and start speaking with your leadership and see what that looks like on a larger scale.
Yeah, or let us know things that your organization does to be involved
Mm-hmm.
in the community. We want to make sure we're highlighting all of the awesome stuff that's happening, that is out there, that already exists. So, um, Though, I was really excited to see that information about community and advocacy, um, because that's what our guest today is all about,
Woo!
is community and advocacy. Like, they are so awesome. When Meaghan and I were planning this podcast and thinking about potential guests, this person I think was probably the top of both of our lists because they're just that awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And every time they speak, it's just like, "Oh, say more, say more, say more." And so it was like a no-brainer that they were the first person we reached out to join us for Not a Lonely Coffee Break.
So I met this person when I was working in the nonprofit sector and I was in advocacy. So I was really just trying to connect and find local advocates who were the rocks in the community as far as who people listen to, right? Because you can say all you want, but if no one's going to listen to you, it's kind of difficult. And this person was immediately just so outspoken, so um, eloquent with everything that they said and stood for working with youth experiencing homelessness and the queer community, and then also just civil rights for those who are disenfranchised by the system that's governing us. So the one, the only Tlaloc Fierro.
Well, we are so excited to have you join us. We were just telling everyone that you were like the no-brainer pick for our first coffee chat because we both just think you're awesome. So thank you again for joining us. Can you
Yeah,
say your name
so
for me? Because I
I
haven't
mean,
been able to get it
I
right.
gave you
Tlaloc. I like it for several reasons. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually part of my coming out, but it's the name of the Aztec rain god. So all the different connotations that go with storms and rain. But for me, it like was just the epiphany after a whole bunch of crying. So it was just literally me out there being like, "Let tears become rain." Chose the name, and it sounds all cheesy, but I like it. But
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah,
I love
it's
it.
beautiful.
It's beautiful.
So, as I told my story about how I met you, please tell us a little bit about, what you're doing right now in the community, because I know that you touch on so many different things.
I do have a tendency to kind of just be all over the place because I don't live like a single policy or single issue life. I end up showing up into a lot of different spaces. But I have always been centered around youth and youth experiencing homelessness. And of course, LGBTQ youth are at the forefront of that. I can't worry too much about things that are outside of my control. So, in my personal work in the community, I'm very much focused on Dallas things and things focused directly in my community. And as far as my professional work, that has me traveling all over Texas and doing a lot of more, I guess, work on broader issues and definitely more policy work rather than the direct service type of work that I'm more used to here in Dallas.
It's awesome. So it's definitely been a journey for you. When I see direct services, you're like able to see the change happen right in front of you. You can feel it, saying, "Hey, what I'm doing is actually doing something that's wild." But then in advocacy, it's always it's the long game. So as you have like come to your identity and your true self recently, and have really been very courageous, and I've honestly um I have no words to explain it, but I love the way that you are who you are, and you seem to have no fear. But I know that like you said, you've struggled, like just by saying it in your name, that's part of what has happened. recently, and that's just so courageous, you know. And me knowing some folks who are still struggling with coming out, and a huge part of that is because of their work, right? They're afraid of like their legacy in their work, how that might disrupt it and how it might disrupt their lives. So I'm just thinking, when you were going through this, what are some things that you wish leaders did to help support you?
Well, I think to answer that, I first have to address that I'm still going through this. This is not like even just coming out, like the first time that I came out as lesbian, like it's not something that's a one and done type of situation. It keeps happening, even in the strangest of places. Like this sounds kind of silly, but I texted my massage therapist and I was scheduling massage, and I was just like, "Oh wait, I haven't talked to you in about like a year. Let me go ahead and update you and make sure that we don't have a change in services." And like, yeah, I wasn't really worried about him. It was just more of a notification. Hey, I'm going by a new name. Um, but ultimately, like, it's still a coming out process every time. And even getting
Mm.
folks to understand that I'm going under like a different pronoun is interesting. So when we're asking, like, I guess, what leaders could do, uh, one of the most supportive things was actually getting pronouns right immediately. I happen to work for a great company, so I was very lucky in that when I made my announcement, I was able to make it private, as in it was internal to the organization because I do lead that public facing role as community outreach. It helped my mindset. And this might be a little too much information now, but I ended up sharing it somehow with my therapist. And I'm going crazy. I'm feeling like I'm going through two persons. I'm one person at home and I'm a whole nother person at work. And it's just like literally every meeting, like introducing myself with a name that I'm like disconnecting with and pronouns that I'm no longer using, and then being at home and being called someone else. And it was just really, really bizarre. Um, and
Wow.
luckily, like I said, I'm lucky enough to work with people who are not only very, very kind and friendly, and accepting and warm, but they're also competent. And they've also done the legwork of looking up what it means to be supportive, not only to their personal like circle, but what it means to be professionally supportive. So when I did come out, it ended up being at a town hall meeting. And it was just like on the fly. Like I told my team, hey, I'm about to make an announcement. And they were cool. And I made it to the larger office and made them know that it wasn't going to be public just yet. And then the comms team was right there ready with let me know how we want to rework your bio. I was able to request a new email address, and my email address was handed to me in like 30 minutes of me requesting it. And that was just because
Wow.
Wow.
the issue. And that just was again reaffirming, and it's just, yeah, we're gonna go with
Mm.
this. This is who you are. And
Mhm.
it was really, really shocking in a good way. Again, taking all that trauma and not knowing what to do with like actual good news. But it was really, really nice, and it helped me get my footing on that. I guess that platform of what is my identity and what is that public role. Because of course, like what isn't a name, right? It's the most most basic human thing that we have. It's what we literally end up answering to. Um, and I think it's pretty cool that my work was just so accommodating for it.
I love that. No, I think that's so awesome that everything kind of happened quickly, right? You put the words out there, and I'm sure I'm sure it was kind of scary not knowing for sure how they might respond. You maybe hoped that they would respond a certain way, and then for them to say, "Okay, cool. Here's all of these things that we're going to do as fast as possible, so that you feel comfortable in this. I love that.
It's a very unique privilege. And that happens to be from working in a space where I am working with advocacy minded folks who do know
Mhm.
what the implications are, and they are really data folks. And it's been really, really awesome to get to know folks on a more personal level and how they came into, I guess, knowing the queer community. Because for the most part at work, it's not felt rehearsed. You
Mm.
know how sometimes folks will have canned phrases to kind of just go along and make things smooth. My coworkers have actually been genuine in wanting to make the connections from what they know of queer community and their experiences, and then how that ties to them knowing. Um, Not in the sense that they're stereotyping or tokenizing, just in the sense that they recognize that the queer umbrella is vast, and it's kind of more like, what color are you in the rainbow? And that's a much funner conversation than,
Mhm.
else. And I guess the other part of it is that I've been out in my community as a lesbian for a very, very long time. So the queerness comes
Mhm.
with a package. Coming out as trans has also brought up into question what is orientation. Um, but it's been,
Mhm.
I don't know how to explain it. Queer fam is great. They're the best support that I have. They are my chosen fam. And in
Mhm.
their words, like, even if you come to figure out that you are like heterosexual, heaven forbid, like, you are grandfathered into the gays and you are forever gay. And it's just like, that was just really, really warm and receptive. Um, because the queer community was the first to accept me, the first to recognize me.
I know you shared about how your particular journey has been, um, at least in the workplace. You've had a positive experience, at least in coming out sort of in that space. I'm curious though, for any of our listeners who are kind of like, well, good for them, you know, what might have been some potential red flags for you that you would have maybe um considered looking elsewhere for employment, or maybe even gave you doubts about whether or not this was the time to come out?
Well, I guess the red flag would have been when I checked for allies, right? Before coming out
Mhm.
in any situation, whether it be personal or professional, you always want to make sure that you have that support system in place, right? Either to celebrate or mourn with you. Somebody who's going to have your
Mhm.
back. And I did that within my workplace. I ended up
Mhm.
reaching out to my immediate coworkers and my immediate supervisor, and I told them where I was at. And I was just honest about it. They ended up just, again, reassuring me that in, like, their eyes, like, I'm still who I am. They'll get used to the new name. That's been the hardest part at work, right? The pronunciation of. But for me, there was a lot of green flags, more than red flags, right? And the green
Mhm.
flags is that there was a lot of other queer people at work. There is a lot of there's a handful of theys and thems out there, and it's just like, okay, we got some genderqueer folks. Okay, cool, cool, cool. And then we have some just straight up like lesbians and gay men. Like, it's just mixed in there.
Mhm.
Um, so with that, there's also that comfort of me. I know that it's going to be a different switch, a different change, but it should be okay, right? Because again, those are queer fam, and those are professional
Mhm.
relationships, not personal, but they should be a little bit more competent and should be able to help me out a little bit more. And then, like I said,
Mhm.
in the actual work, we work on advocacy issues, specifically for youth experiencing homelessness. And we know the high rates
Mhm.
of LGBTQ homelessness. And for crying out loud, that's my story and my experience. So that's also part of why I align myself with the work. So a lot of the work for me was already done before I got here. But it was definitely checking again the green flags, making sure that the personnel
Mhm.
book didn't have any kind of weird things about gender policy or anything weird that might come up later, and just making sure that I
Mhm.
had the ability to take the leave that I should. And I I'm just very lucky.
That is so
Yeah,
awesome,
that's
and I
awesome.
love.
Jeez. I'm like, whew, okay. Well,
No, I've been jotting down some like internal notes, right? You highlighted some really important things, right? Checking for allies. I think it's important to acknowledge that allies can make a huge difference for someone in their workplace. I also think looking at policies, because even if you are an inclusive workplace, sometimes things can get overlooked. And so being able to kind of say, are there any policies that are in this handbook that could potentially be problematic
yeah, that
that
was a good point.
I feel like I can bring this to the higher ups and advocate for these policy changes internally. I love that. I think those are really important things that stuck with me for sure. So, we like to not just talk about the nitty gritty on this show. We also like to talk about coffee. So,
Love between me and T is, is coffee. It's like almost to a heart like heart explosion. I think we're on the same level.
okay, well,
But
also, like,
yeah,
recently, the past couple of times I've been seeing you post stuff on social media, you always put, like, drinking coffee, and then you say whatever is on your mind. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how much coffee do you drink a day? How many
yes, we
cups
need
of
to know.
coffee do you have?
That's a good question. It varies. Today I had 2 cups out of the coffee pot here at home, and then I had a large iced coffee from the out.
Fresh in.
And thank thanks again for joining us and sharing a little bit about your experience. I actually think it can maybe give some of our listeners some hope
Yeah.
as they are maybe going through their own experiences in the workplace. Before you joined us, we were talking about some of the research and data that we have seen just in terms about transgender or gender nonconforming individuals navigating a lot of negative stuff in the workplace. And so hearing your story, I think, is a great reminder that there are places out there that are green flags and they're
Right.
waiting for you to work for them.
It just shows like, how valuable you are, and the work that you're doing is, I mean, it's priceless.
Again, thank you so much for joining us, sharing your coffee break with us. If any of our listeners want to connect with Tlaloc on social media, you can find them. We'll make sure to tag them so you can make sure to support them and the work that they're doing. I really loved that Tlaloc was our first guest.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, every time they talk, I just continue to be amazed about their story. And I love that they joined us. They were the perfect fit. I'm glad that we thought of them.
Thank you for having me.
But yeah, we are out of coffee, so that is our cue to wrap up. Thank you guys for joining us. As always, make sure you hit those subscribe buttons so that you never miss an episode. We drop an episode every other Wednesday, so you can also kind of have that internal reminder. So subscribe, follow us, all of those things. We really want to engage with you guys on our social media. We've just launched on our Patreon our coffee break crew package. So for $5 a month, you can become a member of our coffee break crew. And that will give you access to exclusive content that can include extended episodes, extended interviews with some of our guests, because we never want to cut any of our guests off. And we'll also be including anytime that, interviews, if we're out in the community and we're talking with folks, we might include little snippets for you guys to engage with on there. So lots of exclusive digital content that is only going to be available on our Patreon account for $5 a month. You also will have pre-access to any kind of merch that becomes available. We are working on some merch that we can put out for you guys with our logo, our tagline. So we want to make sure that when that drops, those of you that are part of that coffee break crew will have first access to those purchases, because it will be limited products, of course, because we are broke.
I think the word is broke.
But that also brings me to make sure I highlight it is $5 a month. You will have access to all of that awesome stuff. But as our community is growing and as we build some of that exclusive content, that $5 a month might initially look more like you are supporting us. So it is more of a general support membership.
I, for one, am excited for the merch. I'm ready for a tagline on a t-shirt, so y'all stay tuned at some point.
We're excited about all that. So yes. Thank you guys again for joining us for Not a Lonely Coffee Break. We're a podcast about coffee and work, but make it queer.
Well, make it queer.
We are your hosts. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Meaghan.
And we will see you next time.
Toodaloo.
Toodaloo.